What's going on, guys? Matt over here, Lethal Camaro, and today I am going to walk you through how to change your brakes on your car. Now, not only is it changing your brakes, it's also changing your pads, taking your rotors off, and putting new brake pads that are not the OEM Brembo pads, so that way we would potentially get less dust, I can hope. So in this, it's going to be not a quick install. I'm going to end up doing on camera, one front, one rear, and I'll do that amazing teleport and it will jump us to when it's all complete, said and done. And then I'll do a follow-up video with how the power stop brakes work, how they feel, and then obviously how they dust or not dust, or little dust, a lot of dust. You guys all know this. So hopefully it's a lot less dust. Hopefully it feels good. But again, if you're looking to replace your brake pads or pulling your rotors off or replacing your rotors or having your rotors turned, this will be the best video for you, I hope. So let's get right on into it. First and foremost, and I didn't necessarily show you the video of this, but I put the car up on jack stands. Well, it's on jacks in the front with jack stands supporting just in case it falls, and then the rear is on jack stands at the rear cross member. I'll show you that shortly. But we pulled the wheels off already, pretty easy to do. Here's your brake caliper, your rotor. It's really a couple bolts, popping out a couple caliper pins, and getting them lined up and ready to go. But the biggest thing is getting your rotors turned, which is really important. So anytime you change your pads on your car, regardless if it's new pads or not, unless you bought brand new rotors to go along with them, you should turn your rotors. This is very important. The main reason being is your rotor, like my rotors currently, are worn with the pads that are on the car. So there's unevenness, there's grooves, there's pits, there's all sorts of nastiness. So by turning them, it gives you a perfectly flat surface to start with your brand new pads, so they both break in appropriately, match up with each other without weird grooves or divots or anything from the previous pad. This will stop squeaking, squealing, and all sorts of unwanted noises that your car will make if you don't do this properly. So in taking the caliper off, it's actually not too difficult. One, I have a nice bungee to hold the caliper, so once I pull it off, I have something to hang it from. You will need, I would say get a ball peen hammer. A regular hammer would work if you don't have one. You'll need a punch to punch out the actual pins. These are your caliper pins that are holding all the brackets in place. And you can either use a socket. I do have an air tool here. What size is this? This is a 13/16 for the rear backside bolt. So there's two big bolts actually holding your caliper in place. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the brake pads first. Then we will pull the caliper off. And then from there, we'll get into the actual rotor. So there's two pins. Just working on the top one right now. So once you get it through, you should be able to push on the metal clip here. There we go. So one thing that we will do on the pin is you do want to make sure you have caliper grease. You can kind of see where it rubs already. You want to grease those when you put this back in. So hit my punch, do the bottom one. And of course, the bottom one will come out easy. So here's your metal bracket. Make sure you do want to know which one's your top and bottom. I try to always keep them in the same position. I'm probably gonna need. Oh no, you can just push it. So you see, I applied a little bit of pressure on the brake pad, and that allowed it to wiggle, and it just pulled right out. Now these brake pads aren't bad. I still have a lot of brake left on them, but I want pads that don't dust. So go ahead and pull that out. So what I'm gonna do with my marker, one thing that you do wanna do is these bolts are torqued bolts. You want them torqued to a certain setting. So when you put the bolts back in, you want them to line up. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna take this Sharpie, since I don't have like a regular marker paint or anything like that, and I'm just gonna mark the actual caliper, what is this? Basically the bolt and the structure that's bolted to. So I know it's lined up. Ah, it worked. Thank you, Jesus. There you go. So, that's how you take the full caliper and your brake pads out. Now at this point we want to take the rotor off, and that rotor is held in place by one bolt. And this is a Torx bolt, and let's find out what size it is. It is a T30. I'm using my torque wrench to pull this off. Maybe. Yep, that was easy. I drove once in the rain. Here's your rotor. Man, that is rusty. I'm probably gonna take some cleaner and clean all that, but there you go. There's the front. So let's go ahead and do the back and show you how easy that is. Now we're doing the backs. The backs are very much the same way. The only difference is the back bolts are different size. So, for those of you who don't know, by taking your rotor off, you expose your e-brake, which looks a lot like an old school drum style brake with the pads. This just expands out and tightens up and locks your car into position. Okay guys, we've pulled the calipers and the rotors off on all four corners. We'll do a quick walk around so I could show you that I actually did it. But before I do that, I'll tell you about it as I walk around. So, fronts, rears, the other rear, and the other front. Man, those are rusty. So one thing I will note is on the rear side, I wasn't able to get my air tool back there. It was just too big. So we had to manhandle it, and it hurt. It wasn't easy. Those bolts are on there really, really, really strong. You know, if you're doing this on your own, make sure you have someone that can pull the bolts off for you, like a big, strong Kyle. Anyways, so we pulled them all off. We're gonna head down to Sears, get the rotors turned, and then we'll put the new brake pads in and show you how to do that. So let's go do it. Okay guys, we just got back from Sears. We turned the rotors. It cost us $11 per rotor, so 44 bucks. It's a lot better than going out and buying all brand new rotors, but they look really good. Nice and turned, good to go, ready for the new brake pads. So first step is, again, we have our brand new turned rotors. Gonna go ahead and put these on. The rotor's actually pretty easy to put on when you put it on. Put the bolt in so it doesn't fall off. So, and then I actually have my torque wrench here. I'm not gonna torque this, but I just want it on tight. So that's on, and at this point now, the only thing I'm reusing from the stock brakes are the pins, so the caliper pins. So you're gonna have your brand new brake pads. You will have a brand new metal clip, so you'll want to use this. And then it does come with new ceramic brake grease, and this is more greasing the touch points, not the front of the pad, and then also the pins. Now, so I got a little piece of sandpaper. If you look at your pins, you'll see where they touch a lot. I usually just like to give them a once over, get any rust or potential buildup off. So, pretty clean. Now we have to mount the caliper back on the brakes. So I'm gonna try to undo my bungee with one hand. There you go. Get out of here, bungee. And remember, I have my top and bottom bolts separated, so I'm gonna put those in exactly how they were. I'm like, why is this not sitting flush? There we go. Make sure your rotor is sitting flush. Now you remember we did mark these bolts. So when we tighten them up, we want to make sure they line up with the marks that we made. Actually, let me see. Sorry. That one's lined up. God, this like, get out of the way. There we go. Those are on. New pads. So we're just sliding the new pads in. There we go. So at this point, you definitely want to basically where the pins slide in at. So we can pull this out a little bit. So the pins, I don't know if you can see, but there's these little holes right here. So we want to put a little grease on each of the holes. Again, you don't have to put too much. Put a little grease on the pins. Mainly where they main contact at. You can see how I put the grease on there. And then this is where the fun begins. This is where the fun begins. There's a hole, there's a hole, there's a hole, there's a hole. There's a hole. Actually, I could probably put this on after. And this is the tricky part on this side. So not only do you have to make sure the pin lines up through these holes, but you need to make sure it lines up with its peg hole down here as well. And this is where the ball peen hammer comes into play. Okay, so putting the metal bracket in. Again, putting grease on the active touch points on the pin. And again, at this point, the pin should slide in. See the grease poking through? That means it's properly lubed. Am I lined up? Yeah, it's in there. There we go. So these may be a little loose, but as soon as you get your brakes for the first time, these will tighten up and be good to go. Front brake installed, good to go. Pads are in, pins are lubed. We tightened up the 2 rear bolts on the backside and made sure that the marks lined up with the marks we made before we took them off. Yeah, I think this side's good to go. So we'll go ahead and do the rear side, and then we'll go ahead and fast forward to the finished product on all 4 corners. So on the rear side, what we're going to be doing is we're going to put the caliper back on. Obviously, we've already put the rotor in place. So we need to put the caliper back on with the 2 big bolts, which I have top and bottom. So I'll put that in exactly how it came out. I'll line those bolts up, torque them in the right spot, put the spacer back on, and then we'll put the caliper back on. Again, same just like the fronts. We'll lube up the pins, slide them in, get the pads in, line them up. It's as easy as that. I'm gonna fast forward through the rest of this because we've already did it on the front and it's exactly the same for the back. Okay guys, we have the fronts and the rears completed. You can see I got the wheels back on. We're basically good to go. Now we just gotta do the other side, and I'm just gonna do that with just a snap. And we're done. So, we put all new brakes, turned the rotors. I attempted to clean a little bit, not as much as I wanted to, just because it's getting late and I was running out of time and I don't want my wife to kill me. But again, we turned the rotors, we put the brand new brake pads on. I went through the install on those. The biggest thing is make sure you torque those big bolts on the backside on the calipers to mount those back in place. Also make sure to slide those pins in. Don't forget your grease, got to get that grease on there. But outside of that, once you get in the car and start it up, pump your brakes 2-3 times. You're gonna feel your pedal almost go all the way to the floor at first, but on the second pump or third pump, it's gonna feel really firm and stiff. Just do it a couple more times, make sure it stays nice and firm and stiff, and then take your car for a drive. Now, proper break-in for the pads, you know, you speed up 60 miles an hour, you know, 60 to 10, 60 to 10, 60 to 10, 60 to 10. Never to a complete stop. You always wanna keep them rolling while you're breaking those in. But once they're broke in, if you keep doing that 60 to 10 and you hear no more squealing, you're good. Now, I just did a quick lap up and down the street, not nearly as fast as I probably should, and I heard no squealing, so, but I'll do a proper break-in tomorrow when it's not super late. But outside of that, the install was pretty easy. Again, those rear bolts, if you don't have a proper tool, might cause you some problems. I'm a big guy. It did take a little bit of muscle to get them out. But outside of that, that's how you change your brakes and your rotors for 2016-2017 Camaro. As always, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the content, hit that subscribe button. If not, likes, comments, shares, always appreciated. Lethal merchandise down in the description. But until next time, I'll see you on the road.